Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healed and Chilled. And today we have another wonderful, amazing special guest. And as you guys know, I like for guests to have control of the narrative, especially in the beginning. So, Tammy, if you would, can you please introduce yourself from your own point of view in your own words, and we'll dive right into the interview.
Sure. My name is McCoy. My actual name is Tammy, but my writer's name is McCoy. Recently, I
Mhm.
wrote a book called Delilah versus the Ghastly Grim. And so that's what I'm kind of hoping that we have a little bit of time to discuss. It's the story about a young girl who, after a life-threatening seizure, an indigo door opens in her mind and she's catapulted into this new fantasy world where she has to kind of uncover her powers to
Mm,
survive. Her powers are rooted in her disability. And I
mm,
wrote the book for my grandchild who
mm,
was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome. Most people
mm.
don't know what that is. It's a severe and sometimes catastrophic seizure disorder.
Ah,
So basically, what happened was I came across a study that said that there weren't very many books out there for kids with special
mm.
needs. So I wrote this one right here.
Oh, wow.
Delilah versus the Ghastly Grim. And it's doing pretty good. It's won a few awards. It's been on the bestsellers list on Amazon to a couple of different categories. Number one in the category of children's epilepsy health. Yeah. Yeah, so we're pretty happy with how everything's going with it.
Wow.
And then for my day job, because most writers need a day job,
Fair.
I am a psych nurse.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And as a part-time, because I also do have a day job as well, but my passion project is a children's confidence coach. So I am just so fascinated with how you were able to turn something that some might see as like you said, like a catastrophic situation and turn it into a book and helping other children see their what some may call a disability as a power and see it as something that they can use to grow and build. So I'm curious, what inspired you to create a book? I know you mentioned you're a writer, but you can write a book about anything really. So how did you say, okay, I want to turn this into a fantasy book and then go through the store? Like, how can you walk us through that whole process?
Yeah, actually, I wasn't writing a children's book. I had
Oh,
decided
okay.
that I wanted to write an adult book, and it was supposed to be a thriller
Oh,
about a
wow.
psych nurse.
Okay.
that was that was what it was supposed to be about. And I was taking this class, and I was doing some research, and I came across the study about the kids who, that there isn't a lot on the market for kids with disabilities. And
Nope.
because I have a grandchild
Mhm.
who has special needs, who was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, it kind of just kept eating away at my mind.
Mm,
And then that just started me thinking, like, I wonder if I could write something for her to help bridge that gap, but for kids, other kids who that all kids would be able to enjoy,
right.
make it authentic. And then I kind of just, that's where it all started with
Mm,
some research, and I put my adult book aside, which I'm actually back on writing now. And
oh,
that was put on hold so that I could make this book and get it out there a little bit faster. So that's kind of what happened. I mean, really, I say it's not even my book. I say it's my grandchild's book
aw.
because everything that's in there, I don't even feel like I wrote it. I feel like it wrote itself.
Mm,
I was just the person
understand.
who typed,
Mhm.
because everything's in there is like something that was happening with my grandchild at that time. And I'm religious, so I knew I wanted some religious themes in there. And I
Mhm.
was like, how am I going to do that? And she would do something, and I would be like, okay, that I'm putting with
Ah,
this, and then that's
okay.
that chapter kind of thing. So it really was something that just kind of unfolded very naturally, very
Mm,
easily.
I love that. And I find that especially like as creatives, sometimes you really don't know where it's for me, it's more like visual art. You really don't know what the painting is going to look like until it's finished. So it sounds like kind of the same thing like with your writing, it was just flowing. And was that coming from a space of like, did you ever know what the story was going to be as you were writing it? Or like you said, things just started happening and you're like, okay, this makes sense with that Or was it more like, okay, this is now that we have an overall understanding of what the story is, did it, okay, let me start that question over because I'm even confusing myself. But what I'm trying to say is, when you say that it was just in flow, was it more so just naturally coming through? Or were you like, okay, I have an idea, I want her to go on this particular adventure and have this thing, and then life kind of put the pieces together?
It was kind of a mix of both. So I knew that I wanted it to have something to do with the fact that the girl would have a seizure disorder. And
Mm,
immediately my idea, it was like immediate, where it was like, okay, because her seizures can be so bad that they can be life threatening. I knew
oh,
almost immediately that I wanted it tied to that and had it be something where she would have what I like to say is I like to present it as basically what some people would call her weakness. I wanted to turn
mm,
into her greatest strength. So I knew
yes,
I wanted to do that. And
yes.
then, but I wasn't sure like exactly how it was going to unfold.
Mhm.
Um, Part of the program that I was in is they help you kind of create a plan of action, and they say, wait, basically what you do is you take a character and you throw rocks at them. And I was like, I like how they presented it that way, because then it's like challenges. How are they going to overcome these challenges?
Mm,
How are they going to develop? What's their character arc going to be? So then that got me thinking about some of the things I wanted to incorporate. But so all of that kind of came through the program that I was in. And then it just was very natural. I felt like I wasn't even
mm.
writing it. It was all just, I knew this was going to be what was the next chapter. Some of it I even dreamed.
Oh, okay.
There was a boat that I put in the book called the Nord. The
Mhm.
main character Delilah, it goes on a quest and she has to take the Nord to on the Serpentine River. And I had never heard of the organization, the Nord, before. The book was already written. It was completely edited. I did like in the area of 30 edits on the book. It actually
Oh,
didn't take
wow.
long to write. It took like maybe 90 days to write, but went through repeated edits. It
Okay.
was also professionally edited by um, an award winning
Hmm.
um, an award-winning writer and agent, and then also the editor of Hunger Games edited Delilah versus the
Oh,
Ghastly. I know that was pretty
wow.
exciting for
Okay.
me too.
Yeah.
And it had already gone through all of those phases, went through my
Mhm.
edits, went through their edits, was ready, had the illustrations from the illustrator. I used a professional illustrator, and it was ready to go when I came across an organization online called the Nord. And interestingly enough, that was what I dreamt. You know, I had the dream of the boat. I could
Wow.
see the boat's name. I put it in the book, and that organization helps people with disabilities. And I thought, wow, you know, this is almost
Oh.
it. I always say it wasn't like a nudge, it was like a push. I'm supposed to be doing this because I
Yeah.
used to be a director of a school for kids with disabilities. And
Oh,
that was something I
wow.
had never even thought about doing or wanted to do. It kind of was a job that fell in my lap.
Mm.
And then when I left that, I had a grandchild with a disability. And
Oh,
then the
wow.
book thing. So I was like, you know, this is just something that I feel like I was meant to
Yeah.
write. So it unfolded very naturally and easily.
Mm.
I'm not always, when it comes to writing, I can be a very slow writer. It could take me quite a long time to write something. This, I felt like I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would just
Oh,
write a whole bunch of
wow.
pages, and then it was good to go for the whole day, kind of thing. It was very easy to write that book. Came very
I
naturally.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I find that a lot of things come in dreams. And it's just fascinating how you can dream about something and then it actually exists like in real life. So tell us how that was like while you're going through this process where you're like, okay, how is this going to happen? But then your granddaughter does something that it's like the answer, or okay, I'm dreaming, and you dreamed the boat of like Nord, and then you found out that this organization actually exists. Like what like those are so many like serendipitous experiences, and you already said it was like a fast pace. So like how did it feel while you're in that process and you're like, oh wait, look, there's another answer, and here's another one, and here's another one?
Yeah, I would see the answers basically throughout the day. And it's funny you do say the thing about the dreams, because I do feel like a lot is given to us in dreams, but not everybody
Mm,
pays attention to it.
yeah.
Um, I, I, I don't know if I've ever shared this with other podcasters, but I remember years ago I had a dream that I could paint. Well, I've never had a class in painting. I never
Okay.
picked up a brush, nothing like that. But I told my husband and he said, well, why don't you see if you like it? So I bought some canvas and it was very interesting because I can't draw, but for some reason, when I paint and put the colors together, I can paint. And in fact, some
Wow.
of my art ended up being in a movie. So yeah, it was in an indie film. So because somebody saw the artwork on my husband's,
Mm,
he has a YouTube channel, Drum Dum. So they saw the artwork on his channel and they said, who did the artwork? And he said, my wife. And I was like, you know, it all came from a dream. I just had a dream
wow.
that I could do it. And it was kind of like the dream
Yes.
with the Nord, and then it's throughout the day, I kind of let my imagination just go where it wants to go. I would
Mm,
take long walks because we live by a nature trail. So I would take
mm-hmm,
long walks and just kind of imagine, like, what is it going to be like? But a
mm,
lot of it did come from my grandchild Delilah too. So for example, I knew
oh,
I wanted there to be some religious elements, and I knew I wanted a
mm-hmm,
scene that was kind of similar to what happened with the Sanhedrin. And then my daughter sends me a snapshot of my grandchild holding a baby kangaroo. And I had been talking to a writer who said, you know, kids like hybrid characters, so be sure to include some hybrid characters in there. And I was like, well, it was like meant to be because it was like the perfect storm. This person
wow.
kind of encouraged me to do this, then I knew I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do that, and then I had the picture. So it ended up being the Kangaroo Council in the book, which I'm told a lot of people really love the Kangaroo Council.
Oh.
So yeah, so it just kind of everything just flowed so naturally
Mm.
and easily, and things, whatever was happening in that moment, was like the chapter that I was on.
Oh my
My
gosh.
grandchild requires therapies every week, so I take her
Mm,
to physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And so when she's going through these therapies, some of what was happening with those ended up being like in the book. Like, for example, we were working on some flashcards and we got to the one on the snake. And she said she said snake, and it was beautiful because she struggles with articulation. She said it
mm.
so perfectly, but she said she did not
Oh.
want that card. She did not like snakes. And I was like, well, a snake is going to be the monster in the book. That was like, I needed a monster.
Oh,
So then I made it like a
wow.
huge Titano cobra snake, kind of thing. So it was
Wow.
all tied to whatever was going on in my life at that time, or in her life at that
Yeah.
time. It's her
I
book.
love that. And I can relate as a visual artist as well. Like sometimes I'll dream about a painting and then as I'm going through the day I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I was dreaming about this thing." So it's just so interesting how everything is connected and I think sometimes in life as we're going through our more mundane aspects, it's so easy to forget that everything is still connected. So I think that that's so beautiful. Something that also stuck out to me from what you originally said was that it's an indigo door. And I feel like you had to pick indigo for a reason because that's not the most common color. So why indigo and then why a door?
So you are catching on correctly,
Okay.
because anyone who's familiar with everybody. I'm a Christian, but I also have studied a lot of other religions and
Hmm.
other perspectives and beliefs. So indigo is an important color with your chakras. So it's
Okay.
kind of like it's in your head, and it's kind of like what connects you to the universe. And so
Mm,
when I was thinking about, I wanted there to be a passageway for her, and I wanted it to be something
mm,
opening because she had this severe seizure.
mm,
And so that's why it was a door kind of opening in her mind, and that's why it was that particular color. Also in the book, you'll find numerical, um, I guess, Easter eggs. somebody was asking me about that the other day. They book group said, I noticed you use the numbers 369. And I was like, yes, I do. You'll
Okay.
see it in every single chapter, because if you know anything about Tesla and his
Mhm.
belief on the numbers of 369 and the connection to the universe and so forth, that is why I included those in there too. So it's almost like it's a child won't pick up on those things, but some adults are actually reading the books, and some of the adults are picking up on the
Wow.
Easter eggs that I kind of have in the book, and it's all weaved together. Because I feel like everything, even different religions, everything is connected
Yep.
and not necessarily mutually exclusive the way some people present it.
Yep.
You can actually find the connections and the overlapping pieces. And I wanted to include that in this book because I feel like it's not just um, a book for kids, it's a book about inclusion, and it's also a spiritual
Mm.
book.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I'm like so excited. I love like children's books and things. I was actually just talking to some of my students about like what they're reading and things. Now I'm like, oh, I have a new book for you guys.
Yay.
So yeah, so how did it feel like once it was finished and like you created and or were the vessel, it sounds like as well, like for this book to come into our experience and our reality, and it was for your granddaughter. I feel like that's such a I hate to be cliche, but it's like such a noble thing to do. And like when you're in the process of it, sometimes you don't even realize until it's finished, like, oh wow, look what I created. And so how was it when you finished? And then how did she respond? And how did your child feel like you made this thing for your grandchild? How was that feeling like?
So before I really started writing, I wanted permission from my daughter because I
Okay.
did want to use my grandchild's name. And so I got permission to write the book pretty much. And she was like,
Fair.
yeah, sure, go ahead. You want to write a book for her? Go for it. So yeah, so she knew I was going to write the book, but my grandchild's only 4 years old. So she can't read this book yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
this book is too old for her. It wouldn't have worked for her age range,
Mhm.
and so
Yeah.
I wanted to write it before I yeah, well, I still have the mind enough to write it
Fair
kind of
enough.
thing.
Fair
So I
enough.
figured I'd do it now and then she could read it down the road. But she
Mhm.
does know I wrote her a book, and the character
Aw.
on the book, you could kind of see it here. The character on the book does kind of look like her. So she has dark
Aw.
hair, dark eyes, but she also has a white streak in her hair. So
Okay.
that was put in there on purpose. So she was born with the white streak, almost like in Frozen.
Oh,
Yep, that's
wow.
all natural. You can't get rid of it. It's part of her. So a
Mm.
lot of the features in the story are her, and she does know that the book was written for her.
Mhm.
So what happened was I make these promo videos, and my daughter was showing her one of the videos, and and she said that she was going to be bringing her over my house, and I was like, okay. And so she showed her the video the night before, and I had said, oh, I got the book in. I'll show it to you when you get here. And she told my grandchild, oh, um, mom's got the book, your book is in. And so my
Aw.
grandchild didn't really respond. She's 4 years old. You
Yeah.
didn't think she was going to say anything. She walks in my door, and it was like the greatest moment for me ever. It was really like the greatest moment because she goes, Nana, show it to me. 4 year old. And I was like, is she talking about the book? And she's like, and I show you what? The book. And I was like,
Oh.
what? Did you tell her to say that? And my daughter said, no, I didn't tell her to say it. I showed her your promo
Wow.
video last night, and she must have been thinking about it. And so I gave her the copy, and she
Mhm.
walks around with it. She hugs it. Sometimes she sleeps with it.
Oh.
She
Oh my
knows
god.
it's her book. She can't read it, but
Yeah.
she knows it's hers. So forever she
Wow.
will have that at least. And that
Mm.
alone was reason enough. It's enough for me.
Oh.
But I'm hoping more kids read it because I hope that, they find value in it. I do
Mhm.
really want there to be more out there for kids who have special needs. And I feel like
Yeah.
in general, we need more inclusive books. We need more books
Yep.
that are representative. There just isn't enough on the market in the children's area.
Mhm.
Well, you'll
Wow,
probably
that's
see
so
that a lot.
sweet.
I mean, do you
Yeah.
hear that a lot?
So what specifically, just so I can make sure I answer your
Like that
question?
there aren't enough books out there that are representative, that are inclusive, do you ever recognize that from kids that they wish that they were more characters like them?
I can definitely say so. I've noticed that it's kind of sad. It makes me a little bit sad, honestly. Like not just like with books, but for example, one of the clubs that I have is a Dress to Impress club. It's a Roblox game, and part of what I'm trying to do is keep the children safe on Roblox, which is the main reason why I have these Roblox clubs, just because there's all types of things that are happening now. But um, they mentioned one of the students mentioned that they don't have different body types, for example, on the game. So it's basically like the Barbie effect, where it's like there's one type of body and that's it. So she mentioned that she's using the pumpkin, and I was confused, like, because usually they'll use like the balls or pumpkins to represent Earth, or like some type of just a random prop, but she was using it to change the body type of the character because they only have one type of body on the game. So
Interesting.
yeah. So it's like it's kind of disheartening. It like makes me feel like, okay, so then of course I had to sprinkle in the confidence and like, well, you're perfect as how you are, and etc. But they're young children that I'm working with, and it kind of like broke my heart that I'm like, oh wow, you're seeing what, because the game is called Dress to Impress. So you're seeing what could be what society or this game is presenting as impressive, but you don't see yourself reflected there. So I
Exactly.
see that a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. No, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. So even though it's a good thing that you're doing that, dress to impress and stuff like that. I think it is hard for kids. I remember being young. For some reason, I was
Mhm.
always like a curvier. Even when I was really skinny, I was like a curvy skinny. I was not like I always had hips. And I remember how horrible it
Same.
was for me. I felt so different than everybody else because I was like that, because my shape was like that. And I remember an adult literally taking my arms and placing them at my side and kind of pushing them in. And they're saying, if your buttocks goes past your arms, then you need to go on a diet. And yeah, an adult did that to me when I was very
What?
young. And I was like, and I always felt so bad because it was like I would barely eat to like be
Oh
super
my
skinny. And I
gosh.
was very thin, but I was just shaped that way. That was my natural genetic shape. Later on became a good thing.
Right.
But at the time,
That's
it
true.
was not. And I felt
Yeah.
so low, like sad and
Yeah.
different and just separate from the rest of the other girls. And I feel like I get what she's talking about, because then
Yeah.
that's what you're saying. You're saying this is what you're supposed to be, and
Exactly.
you're not that. And that makes you feel bad about yourself.
Exactly. And I totally agree, because I had a similar situation, specifically closer to like high school, just because I was on the cheerleading squad, and some of the girls would make comments about just my body and say like just like really like cruel things. And thankfully at that point, I was a bit older, so it didn't impact me in the same way. But I was just kind of like, and so now to see and hear the children that are so young talking about, oh, they don't see themselves in a certain way. So I really pour on the positivity, like really intensely, just across the board, because especially now they have access to the internet, they have access to influencers, and all of the influencers have like surgery and things, and so they don't even look like normal people. And so these children are comparing themselves to people that aren't even technically like fully just people. And it's fine if you're an adult and you want to do what you want to do, like no judgment, but the children are suffering. So I definitely can appreciate your book and where you're coming from, because we definitely need more children to see themselves in characters, whether that's from a book, whether that's from a video game, whether that's from a show, or just like, and also I can also appreciate content that is age appropriate, because another thing that I'm seeing, and that's like just really grinds my gears, is when content is marketed towards children, but it's not child friendly content. And I'm noticing that a lot more too. So, yeah,
Why do you
I could
think
go on and
that
on.
is? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's the direction they've been going with that?
I honestly feel like there is a war on innocence. I think that there is a war on childhood innocence specifically. And I think that there is a real market. If you get children insecure younger, then they're going to spend more money on products. They're going to be looser with how they behave. And I think that there is a sick market who would benefit from children are who want to grow up faster than they should be growing up. And I think that they are profiting off of insecurity faster. And I think that there are people who, for lack of a better term, are monsters who want children to want to be older. What are your thoughts?
I see it. I see it. So, I am a psych nurse, so I have kids that come in,
Ugh.
and yeah, and I'm seeing that quite a lot actually. I never really um, thought about it the way that you're presenting it, but I think I see exactly what you're saying. And a lot of these kids, they do seem a lot older, very like I look back at the way I grew up, and I'm like, am I just getting old? Like, am I one of those
Right.
like, oh, am I just like a grandma? And I'm like, goodness, it's so different today, like
Yeah.
your grandma would say to you. And it is, everything's so fast paced, and even they're growing up so fast paced, and they are
Mhm.
seeing things that are not real. They're not real. It's like
Exactly.
you said, even the actors and the actresses, they're getting the surgery so that you can't tell that they have wrinkles. Bright white lights are in their face so you can't see that
Mhm.
they have wrinkles. And it's interesting because my daughter, she was pretty badly bullied when she was young, and we used to
Mm.
watch America's Next Top Model, and I said, they're bullying you because you're pretty. And she would not believe me, and I
Mm.
was like, you could do that. And so I wanted to prove a point, so I took some snapshots of her, and she actually got signed as a model. But
Oh,
very,
wow.
she did. She became a professional model because of being bullied. But what I found
Mm.
interesting is she was like 5'10" and 110 pounds. And they were like, you could afford to lose 10 pounds. And I was like, that would make her a skeleton. I used to be like, you need to eat. You look too skinny. And they were like, no, we want the clothes to hang on her like they would a hanger. And I said,
What?
there's nothing in the hanger. There's like, no, so you don't want like
Literally.
a person there, because that's like what they want to sell. And then even she would get messaged and be like, you don't really look like that. And she said, none of us do. They paint
Mm.
them, they put makeup on them in a certain way to contour their face. And then the images
Oh,
themselves,
wow.
they'll use things to make them, like if they have an area that's not quite perfect, they'll adjust it with like
Mm.
technology. So
A
what we're
Photoshop, yeah.
presenting to these kids is not real. And then they're looking in the mirror and they're
Exactly.
like, I don't look like that.
Mhm.
And so they're feeling bad about themselves, but nobody looks like that, not even the people in the
Exactly.
pictures. So, it's troubling. It's a troubling world. There are benefits about the technology for sure, but I think
Mhm.
it has created pretty significant self-esteem issues, and I'm seeing mental health issues, with some of
Mm.
these kids, because they're just, if you living in a world like this, it's going to affect your mental health.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad to say.
Yeah, and you're right, because even adults are impacted by these new standards. I remember Because I grew up dancing, and then the dance team in my high school sucked. So then I started cheering, and then I cheered in college too. Because I took that very seriously. So I was like, I cannot be on a team that's not good.
I'm still in shock that anyone ever said anything about you because you look like you belong on the cover of a magazine.
Well,
You're
thank
so
you,
pretty.
but I didn't necessarily believe that, to be honest, because just in different spaces. But I remember, and I'm not gonna say which team because I'm really trying not to like throw people under a bus and things, but I remember there was one team where they always used to tell us you're a cupcake away from not cheering. Like just in general, you're a cupcake away. And so, and then it was always like about the way you look. And so I went through a phase where I would not leave the house without makeup on because I just felt so self-conscious. And I'm like older at this point. I'm not 7, 8, 9, but now these girls and mainly young girls, but I'm sure it's having impact on the boys too, but they're feeling like they have to buy these products to, you know,
Yep.
anti-wrinkle. I'm like, you don't even have a wrinkle. Like, can you even spell wrinkle? Like, are
They
you even
have
there yet?
children influencers selling the products.
I
Children
didn't know
influencers are
that.
selling the products. Think about that. Yeah, showing like, hey, you
Oh,
want to be like me? I have all these followers. Use this product. It's pretty interesting.
exactly. And it's like we're kind of getting we're you go seems like now what they're trying to do anyway is take children from being children to like adults. They're not having that awkward teenage phase. You're not allowed to wear off brand. Like I even saw a girl got bullied because she didn't have a Stanley cup. And I'm like, it's a cup. Why do you
I
need to have a
don't
name
get the
brand cup?
cups. It's so funny you say that because there was like I remember there was a story of the kid was upset about the cup and I was like a cup and it was like a Yeti cup and they were like that's 80 $100 and I said for a cup
Exactly.
I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing. It's like an accessory now. And
Yeah.
back when I was a kid, it's like you had to have the right shoes or the white jeans.
Right.
And now even a cup is an accessory. And these companies are making big money off that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Pretty
And
interesting.
yeah, and it's making me like I don't know what the long-term ramifications are going to be, but I can't imagine that we're going with the way that society is trying to push certain things onto children. I can't imagine that long term it's going to create happy, fulfilled, confident children. And children aren't children forever. They're going to turn into adults. And adults are even struggling with we all see things and we're our biggest critic and like, oh, look at this and look at that and look at this. But at least we can recognize that the people that we're seeing, that's not even how they look, but it still can impact us. So, but children, it's like that times a million because they don't understand that. That's not real. That's like what's going on behind closed doors. So I'm interested to know, like, within like your work and things, are you noticing more insecurities? Are you noticing more negative things? And then also, is there any positive that you're noticing in terms of like, okay, this is a sign of relief and hope?
I do see, probably with what I do, I see a lot more of things like kids struggling with depression, and I do
Oh,
think it is created in part by society. It's kind of like what you say. I think that when we're starting them so young, saying you don't match what we're saying is beautiful, or you don't
right.
match what we're saying is intelligent, or you don't fit into this perfect picture, it does work almost like programming and it stays with
Yes.
you. It stays with you. I know that when I was a child, this is a true story, I was often told that I was dumb. And I
Mm,
totally believed it. I thought
mm,
I was dumb. And I didn't really try in school. So,
Mm.
when I got to the end of high school, even though I like didn't crack a book, I was still able to pass all my classes and everything like that, but I barely tried. And I had a counselor discourage me from becoming a nurse. And so I did not become a nurse right away. She said, you probably won't be able to handle the math. I suggest you do soft sciences. And so I ended up getting a psych degree before I became a nurse. I became a professor
Mm.
before I became a nurse, actually.
Oh,
And it was one
wow.
person who steered me in that direction. And it's because she didn't really know me and she didn't know my history or the fact that, I had low self esteem and that people, I
Yeah.
had been told that I was dumb and I believed it. But I joined the military. I served in the military in the Air Force. And my
Okay.
sister encouraged me to go to college. And I did not think that I would do well, but I figured it was
Mm.
free and it might open some doors for me. So I went ahead
Wow.
and I went. And they ran this test in my very first class. The teacher was doing some kind of study and she wanted to test us, and we signed forms and we were able to do the testing. And I thought mine was going to come back terrible, but it ended up my scores were super high. Yeah, and I was so
Wow.
incredibly surprised. So she talked to me about that, and I was like, that can't be right. I think you got the wrong test, kind of thing. And she
I
said, no,
understand.
like she put me in the corner and she's like, I'm telling you, like the difference between you and the rest of the class is like these walls here. And I said, wow, like that doesn't make sense. And she said, let me ask, let me ask you, do you really try? And I said,
Mm.
not, I guess not really. I never really did try. So then that was my first college class. From that point on, I tried, basically had 4.0. I have six
Mm.
degrees, six degrees. But
Come on.
but it was programming.
Yep.
I am now in my 50s. I am now in my 50s, and I still struggle with feeling like I'm
Mm.
dumb. It doesn't matter how much success I have in life. It doesn't matter how
Mm.
many degrees I have. It doesn't matter if the book is a bestseller or if I solve world hunger. I
Mm.
still feel it. It's still that programming is somewhere in there.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what we're doing to these kids right now with these messages.
Yeah. Wow. And okay, so many things. So first, thank you for your service. And then also thank you for sharing. Because I think you bring up such a vulnerable space, and I can relate to some degree because even when I went to college as well, I got like the bare minimum scholarship basically because I went out of state, and so it was a little bit more expensive, especially
A
college
lot
just
more
keeps
expensive.
going up, 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 up. So and I was like, I had to like take the SAT again, and I like missed the deadline or whatever. It was just a lot, but thankfully like my coach, one of my teachers went there, so he like was able to help me or whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is I was 50 points away from the top scholarship, but that would require a different GPA point. And I was like, I could barely, keep my GPA up in high school. Like, I don't want to do that because then what if I get kicked out and da 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 da. And I ended up every semester getting higher than that GPA. So had I just believed that I could have done it, then I wouldn't have been in so much debt now from school. So, but
It's so true, though. It's
yeah,
so
it
true. It's the
is.
belief. It is belief in
Yes.
yourself. And I think those around you, sometimes it's those around you that can impact that belief. It can be society that impacts belief.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just you.
Yeah.
You're like not really believing in yourself despite the things around you presenting the evidence that you should be. But it sounds like you landed on your feet, though. Look at you right now. You have
Yeah.
your own podcast,
Oh,
you help
thank you.
children. You're doing beautifully. You're doing
Well,
beautifully.
thank you. And they say it takes one to know one. So, same to you for sure. And I'm curious to know, like, how did you, because you lightly touched on it, and only if you feel comfortable, how did you get from, okay, like how are you able to accept the new reality of, wait a minute, I'm not dumb? Because sometimes when you run into something that is contrary to your previous programming, it takes a while to adjust, to even accept the reality of, okay, perhaps what I believed previously about myself or the world around is not accurate. And so accepting that fact that, okay, I'm not this thing, I'm actually this thing. It can take a while. And then now you said 6 degrees. So how did you go from that to where you are now? And I understand it's a can be a lifelong thing, like you said, working through, but there had to be a space where at some point you recognized, okay, whether I believe it or not, like this is the actual truth. I'm actually a genius, because to get 6 degrees, you have to be a genius. So how did that happen, if you don't mind sharing?
So, that is a very interesting question, because I had a professor once, Dr. I want to say his name was Dr. Lombard. And I was doing some work under him, and we were talking, and I told him the story about that one time. And he said, it is unusual to accept that you're a different belief. Like you grow
Mm,
up one way and you believe that you're dumb, and it's very hard to change that.
yeah.
And yet I was willing to have an open enough mind where I wanted to basically test it. So I
Mm,
think what happened was, when I saw, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to know how much of a difference there was, but the kind of instructor was like showing me. When
mm,
I saw how much of a difference there was in scores, I was like, something, maybe they're not right.
mm,
Maybe they're wrong. But I didn't know
mm.
for sure. So I
Right.
kind of wanted to test the waters, like maybe I'm going to put more effort into things. And I did. Then I
Mm,
became almost like too much. I will say sometimes I feel like my husband will say it's like I'm trying, I can't fail now. Because if
mm,
I fail, then it's like reinforcement, like they're wrong, they were right, I'm wrong, they're right.
mm.
So it's like now it's like I'm obsessed with not failing. And
Understand.
that is kind of what happened. But I was getting all the A's, and I was just,
Hmm.
and it didn't even take that much. It didn't even take that much effort for me to get them. So, um, that was kind of the start of it, was seeing that I had scored differently. And then I was like testing it
Mm.
almost to see like who's right. Are they right? Or is this teacher right? And so
Wow.
then more and more evidence moved over towards the teacher, because I was doing so well in
Mm,
school. But then whenever I would have a failure, I'd be like, nah, like it must have been the school was too easy. They
mm,
watered down the grades. They were easy A's, they were easy teachers. I'm really dumb. So it's
mm,
very easy to drop right back into the negative, because I think it's
mm.
easier to believe negative things about yourself than it is to believe the
Yeah.
positive things.
Wow. And yeah, I just, I don't even, yeah, I'm just like, wow, because honestly, like everything you're saying is so real, like beyond just like, oh, this is just da da da, surface level. Like this is actually real, because a lot of us, and just in life, it's like battling I don't know if you've ever seen They Clone Tyrone.
I have not.
Okay, so there's a scene where at the beginning where like his mom is in a room and she's like yelling and just spewing just nonsense basically. And long story short, for this particular point, he finally goes in the room after a while, and it's a tape recorder, because his mom, like, we don't know what happened to his mom, because he's actually a clone of another person. But anyway, I think that what happens is there's a tape recorder in our minds of people from the past and voices and things. And so it just becomes this automatic thing on replay. And so you can fence it up and things, but it's always waiting, like, oh, slip up. See, I told you. See, I told you.
Totally agree. It is like a tape recorder, and it pops up here and there. And it doesn't even matter how old you are, because I'm in my 50s now and it still plays in my head.
Mm,
Every time that I don't meet my expectations. And sometimes,
mm,
the higher you set your goals, the more likely you are to kind of face some challenges and
yeah.
obstacles. And if you are struggling to get over those, then that could easily drop you back down again. I do things
Mhm.
like meditation and affirmations and things like that. things like that to try to remain positive. But
Right.
sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
struggle. And I think that a lot of people, who have experienced maybe a childhood where they grew up in maybe a negative childhood or a difficult
Mm,
childhood, or even just people, sometimes it's not even like a truly a negative childhood. It could just be that those around them have said some things that really just stuck. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like almost like reinforce what they already were thinking about themselves, and then somebody says
Yeah.
something, and then it just sticks. So I think those kind of things, they're hard to break those cycles. And some of the things that help with that would be affirmations and meditation,
Hmm.
stuff like that, to try and get out of that negative frame of mind so that you can move forward and accomplish. I do think you can accomplish more when you have a positive
Yes.
perspective. Yeah.
I definitely agree. And like to add to that, not only can you accomplish more, but you can recognize the accomplishments because I'm working through because I have such big dreams that even like when I accomplish a goal, it's like, oh, okay, like that's something, but like I haven't done anything compared to like what I want to do. And
What do
so
you want to do?
well, my ultimate goal, since you asked, I want to have I don't know what it's called yet, but I want to have like a 24/7 school where it has like a boarding school aspect, but mainly for people like let's say someone works at 4 in the morning. Um, if their child doesn't go to school till 8, that's I feel like that's a lot of unnecessary stress. And things are like, or what if they don't get home until 8 o'clock? Then what happens to the child? So I want to have a school where it's 24/7. There's learning at, the right hours and things, and more like learning about how life is and mental awareness and like boarding school. Like, so some type of 24/7 school. That's my like biggest dream. And I want to adopt a bunch of kids so that they can go there, they can live there, and then they can also interact with, other children that would go there. So that's the big goal. So every step I have to remind myself, and I'm taking like different classes and things to keep my mind zen and all that. But I have to remind myself that each step is still a step there, but it can be challenging because I'm like, I have
I
this
think
big
you can do
dream.
it. I actually think you can do it. I think that's a very great goal. The company that I worked for when I was a director of the school, she felt like the education system was not working for her kids. She had kids who had disabilities, and she felt like the education system wasn't working. And she
Mm.
decided to open a school. She did it, and I think if she can do it, you can do it too. And
Yeah.
I will say this, like as a nurse, we work 12-hour shifts. If you're a single mom, it is such a struggle, when
I
it
can
comes to
imagine.
finding places that'll be open to take care of your kids, and even the way the schooling system is designed. It's not
Yes.
really for working moms who are in the medical field who work something like a 12-hour shift. So a school like that would just take such a burden off these
Hmm.
individuals, and it would benefit the child as well. So it's a great idea. I think you could have like a huge, I think you put that school by a hospital, you have it filled.
Oh, good to know.
Because
I'm
they're
gonna
all
put
working those shifts. That they're
yeah.
working those tough shifts, so it would be perfect for them.
Oh, well, good to know. And just to like add this out there, part of the other reason why I want to do that is because I really, really feel, like I said, that there is a war on innocence. And the older that I get, the scarier the world is. And I don't have children of my own. I think that's partially why I can like work with so many kids because I don't have to watch anybody. But I feel like if you have a child, you should be able to know that if you're leaving them at school somewhere that they have to go, that they're going to be okay. They're going to be taken care of. They're going to be fed. They're going to be happy. They're going to be healthy. They're going to be safe in all different versions of the word safe. And there's a lot of things that are happening that to me, I'm like, okay, like one is still too many, but two, three, four, something's going on there. So I just want to interrupt the pattern of nonsense that I feel happens. And I think as much as I do have siblings and I have my students, so I'm always like, are they okay? Like, what's going on? If I don't see them one week, I'm like messaging the mom, like, hey, or the dad, like, I didn't see such and such. And I'm not even their parent. So I can't imagine the level of stress that parents go through leaving their child at a school. And now there's all these horrible things that happen at school. So, you know,
You're
yeah.
right. You're right. As I can tell you as a parent, I used to worry all the time. I still worry. My kids are older now, but now I have a grandchild, with special needs. But I remember there would be a lot of times where I would be very worried about my kids and their safety. And sometimes you do worry about their safety at school. A lot
Exactly.
of the targeting of my daughter. And when I say that she was bullied, I mean like what you see in those Lifetime shows where she was like death threats and stuff like that, all
What?
because a boy liked her. It was silly. We had just moved, a boy liked her. She didn't even like the boy, but it just upset the other girls. So it was like
Wow.
crazy. It was like, to me, I was like, what is happening? What is wrong with these? And as an adult, you can't say to another person's child, like, don't do these things. You can't
Right.
discipline another person's child. So I used to be afraid all the time. But I feel like part of the problem is the school systems with the way that they have things set up. I literally had an incident with my son. I think he was in third grade. And he went to the bathroom, and him and his little friend went to the bathroom. And a bigger kid went into the bathroom. And for no reason, he didn't know my son at all, didn't know him, never met him. He choked my son in the bathroom.
What?
Yes, he was choking my son. And the only reason why my son got away was the other boy came out of the stall, kicked the kid, and then the two ran off. The two small ones ran off.
What?
And so I was, brought to the school and basically given like a 2 sentence apology. That was all that they had this bigger kid, and he was a bigger kid, do. They felt like that was going to be sufficient. And I said, well, it looks like I'm going to be like enrolling my kid into self-defense classes. And
Yeah.
they said, well, we have a zero tolerance policy here. So if he did do something, he would be disciplined or like expelled as well. And I literally turned to my son and I said, don't listen to this principal right here.
Period.
We're not going to be listening. The only
Period.
one you have to worry about is me,
Exactly.
because you're not going to be somebody else's victim over a
Nope.
policy. A policy. So it's like I get I get that it's complicated, and I get that it's very hard to address these issues, but we also have to remember, are we re-victimizing victims here?
Yes.
Like, I mean, there has to be some level of common sense over a
Yep.
policy, a blanket policy. So, there are problems in the school system. There's cookie cutter education.
Yep.
There's the technology is so advanced right now. And I think kids are exposed to so much so early. It's a
Yes.
problem across the board in the school system. So I would love to see something like what you have as an idea, and kind of keep these kids innocent longer, at least, so that
Yes.
they can, because they need it. They need it. The
Exactly.
world, you're going to grow up very quickly.
Hmm.
The world's gonna beat you down when you grow up. Don't
Yep.
push them into it ahead of
Exactly.
time. Let them be young. Let them be kids. Let them enjoy that time while they can.
Exactly. And that's why people like yourself and your book is so important. It is so important because we're giving children the ability to see themselves, to recognize that you don't have to be like people that don't even really exist, like in real life. Like you don't have to grow up too
Exactly.
fast. You don't have to have a boyfriend at 7. You don't have to do
Oh my
certain
goodness.
things.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
yeah, like seriously, like you don't have to do that. Like you have
Oh,
all your life to be once you pass an adult life, like you have much more years. That's what my mom said too. Like they were trying to have me skip a grade, and my mom was like, no, because regardless of whatever you guys are saying, she only gets 18 years or so, even less to be a child. But to me at this point, you're still a child at 18. Like you're still a child in college as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, you only get so many years to be a child and they need to have that. So people like yourself who are pouring that into the children, who are creating spaces and avenues for children who don't match the cookie cutter, because nobody really does. Nobody fits in the cookie cutter system, but they keep just trying to force us in there. But I think I'm just so enamored, honestly, by your story and your presence and things. And I'm just excited for your story and for your book because it's so needed. We need more people like yourself. We need more people like myself. Let's be honest. We need more people like us who are out here, boots on the ground, seeing situations, not just being part of the problem, but being part of the solution. So with that said, because we are coming up on towards the end, I wanted to ask, is there anything that you wanted to highlight or discuss that we didn't already touch on? And I'll just pass it over to you. If anything, you're like, oh, I wish I would have said that, or I wish you would have asked me about this.
Honestly, this was one of the best podcasts that I think that I've been on. I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect
Oh,
some of the direction that we went, and I love that we talked about some things that, I think a lot of people are afraid to address.
yeah.
It is a scary world out there for these kids, and we do have to protect them. And I love that you're making these choices and taking these actions to provide environments for kids that will keep them safer longer. And I do love how you were talking about how we're kind of at war with innocence. I thought that was just that term alone uh, really is the epitome of what is going on in society right now. It's so incredibly true. So I love everything we discussed. I mean, we talked about the book, and I'm excited about the book, and I hope people will read the book. If they want to, they could go to www.blueroundbookgroup.com, and all the information is there. And it's really for all kids to just pretty much feel empowered. And I think
Mm,
that's what we need to do as adults, is to try and
yes.
empower our kids. And it doesn't matter where they are or who they are or what they are in life, whether they're the girl who doesn't look like a Barbie doll, because I didn't look like a
Right.
Barbie doll
Me
either.
either.
And guess
Me
what?
either.
It's okay. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
It'll work out. Because there's, everybody likes kind of somebody different. There's somebody
Yeah.
out there for you. So, I love the fact that she took action even as a
Yes.
child to address that. And most kids would sit in silence and just accept it. But
Hmm.
should they? I say they shouldn't. I say
Nope.
we should encourage them to like be proud of who they are. And I think
Mhm.
you're doing that with every action that you're taking, this podcast, your goals, every little rung on that ladder that you're climbing to get
Thank
there. I
you.
know it can be frustrating. Believe me, I'm older,
Yes.
so I've had to like slowly climb those ladders too. And sometimes you slide right back down again and you're like, oh, I'm on the floor again. How do I get back up?
Yes.
So, that's part of the process. But I think that if we all kind of come together as adults and work towards these things together, we can make a
Mhm.
better world for these kids.
Yes, I definitely agree. Okay, I have two questions that I like to close out with, and then a final question, of course. So technically three, but two are my cliche always go-to questions. So my first cliche always go-to question is, if you could think of a time where you were younger and you were in a dark space, what's one piece of advice that you know now that you wish you knew at that time?
I can think of several times.
Go ahead.
I grew up rough.
Fair enough.
There were times where I was in some pretty dark spaces. And I think what I wish I knew then was that things can get better.
Mm,
I think that's the thing. I think back then
yes.
it felt like this is it. This is
Mm,
all there's ever going to be.
yeah.
What's the point, kind of thing. But I think as I got older, I started to look at things differently. Even the ones I would say that would bring me pain, I could almost now see, well, this person was going through this at this time.
Mm,
So it's almost like now that I'm older, I have a better understanding of what was happening to create the situation that I was
Mm.
in. But if I was younger, I would say that I wish I knew that things can and do get better. You know,
Yes.
it's not the, it feels like the end in that moment. It feels very, you know, like that's all there's ever going to be to life, but that's not necessarily true. And as an adult, you make the decisions.
Mm.
You can make the changes yourself. You don't have to
Yes.
wait for somebody else to do it.
Yes. 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 Okay. That needs to be on a t-shirt. You make the changes. Come on. Okay. So then my second or like my last cliche question, of course, is so the way that the internet works, you never know who is going to watch this later. We never know who's going to come in contact with this podcast, with this interview. Is there any one organization or person or whoever that you would love to interact with that could help you get to the next level of, or could help you get to a new goal that you might have set for yourself?
Probably the Epilepsy Foundation. And the reason why I say that is because with what I'm doing right now is I'm in the middle of a launch for this book, and the main character, the protagonist, does present with a pretty significant epilepsy disorder because it's based off my grandchild. So it would be very meaningful to me if I could have a way to interact with them more, maybe learn more from them, have them on board with the book to kind of share with kids who experience epilepsy. I am pretty happy to say that I have made some strides through social media with certain epilepsy foundations in certain states, not in my particular state. And then Boston Children's Hospital is going to be carrying the book on their epilepsy unit, which
Oh,
was like the light of my
wow. Oh my
week. It was
gosh.
like the light of my week
Wow.
when the director said that. Oh yeah, sure, we'll take that book. And it was
Wow.
wonderful, you know, because I really want kids, and it's written for all kids because it's kind of
Mhm.
like fast paced, Percy Jackson, meant to be
I love Percy
authentic to
Jackson.
the character so that it's just a person, she's a real person living with this thing kind of thing.
Mm.
It's not the end all be all of the book. It's an action paced quest fantasy book. But yeah, if I could have them on board, that would make me super happy because I feel like, you know, part of this is spreading seizure awareness.
Mm. I love that. And you know what's crazy? I'm actually re-listening to Percy Jackson right now. So it's like
No way.
I literally am.
We're
Like
like
I
in tune. You and
literally
I are
am.
in tune.
Yes. So wow. Okay. And then before the closing question, just because sometimes thoughts come up, is there anything now that you're like, oh, I want to speak on this last thing before we go, or I forgot to mention this thing? And is there anything like that? And then if not, where can we find your book? I know you mentioned it earlier, but where can we find your book? What's the best way to get in contact with you if someone wants to work with you or has any questions, anything like that?
So I did start my own publishing company called Blue Round Book Group. And
Okay.
I would absolutely love anyone who's interested in writing stories that are more representative or more inclusive.
Mm.
That's going to be the focus of the imprint. So I would love for other writers who'd be interested in doing that to reach out to me. They can reach out to me at www.blueroundbookgroup.com. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the links for the social media. And there's a link on the author's link that will give you more information about me. And then if you hit the contact link, it'll bring you to the page where you could actually contact me. It'll come to my email. So that would be a good way to do that. That would be wonderful, especially like if you have a story maybe you want to share, because it sounds like you have a lot of interactions with kids and have a lot of
Mm.
experiences that you could probably put in a book right now that would be
Oh,
helpful to others. So if you ever thought about that, you and I need to chat.
okay. Well, hey, don't mind if I do. I never let the opportunity down, but I definitely, I have like, I don't know, I'm like a sometimes writer. Like I have a few books that have started, but I haven't gotten past the first chapter. And so then I'm like, oh, I have what is it called? Squirrel syndrome, I guess. Like, oh, like, oh,
Really?
squirrel. squirrel.
So that's me too sometimes. I have a lot of one chapter starts, one chapter starts, one chapter starts. Here's a little interesting fact. If you wrote like 3 pages a day for 4 months, you'd have your first rough draft. That's it. That's all it takes.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And
Okay.
most people, studies have shown they're most creative first thing in the morning. So if
Yes.
you could write first thing in the morning, you could get it done for the day. You don't even have to
Hmm.
think about it the rest. Well, I kind of like to think about it, go for a
Yeah.
walk, think about it. And then next morning, write again. Tesla used to keep a pen and a pad by his desk. And he said that he didn't come up with some of the stuff. He just woke up and the notes were like there. Who knows? Maybe your note, you keep a pen and a pad by your bed, you'll have your story written out for you with your dreams.
Wow, actually, okay, I would now that you said, I'm just gonna add this too. I did go through a phase like when I was going through a dark time and I would go to sleep like asking myself a question. And then the next day I would like, it was weird. Like even if I was at work or something, I couldn't get anything done until I wrote like a story out and then it would come out as a myth. And then the myth would have the answer to the question that I asked myself the night before.
That
So
sounds
that's
like a book right there.
okay. So maybe
Even
I'll
if
do
you did
that.
like a collection, think about it, you could even make a
Okay.
collection of those. That would be
Oh,
super fun.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sleep on this and see what happens. And okay, and then I didn't hear though, where would we find your book? So I know where we can find you for the publishing, but like if someone wants to go purchase your story right now today, how would they do that?
The book is available on Amazon. It's called Delilah versus the Ghastly Grimm. It's a middle grade fantasy book, appropriate for 9 and above. A lot of adults seem to be reading it. I'm getting a lot of feedback
Mhm.
from adults because they say it's kind of like Percy Jackson meets Harry Potter is what one person described it as.
Oh.
And it's doing really well. It's won 3 awards and has hit the bestseller list, so it's doing okay. We're hoping to
Yeah.
keep up the momentum and just really the whole purpose is I really wanted to make a difference for
Mm,
anybody who reads it. Like if you've ever felt isolated, if you've ever felt alone, if
mm.
you've ever felt different, this is probably a story that'll resonate with you.
Yeah, so I gotta share this with my mom too, because she also loves Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. And
Awesome.
I give my students always a signature round of applause, and you have definitely more than earned one today for your wonderful interview and conversation. And I know that I'm definitely going to get the book because you sold me from the indigo. I was already like, okay, I'm feeling something here. But this was amazing. It was so such a wonderful conversation. I'm so thankful that we were able to sync up and I learned so much from you just in this interaction alone. And you have such a beautiful soul, just to be honest. It was just so amazing connecting with you, talking to you. We went all around the world, had a wonderful conversation. And I know if the book is any representation of how you speak, then I know it's a fabulous, fantastic book. And so everyone needs to go get one. With that being said, this was a wonderful conversation, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Of course.
I appreciate it.